Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. I stepped out of my truck with my boots still caked in dust from the drive up from Modesto. The vineyard gates stood wide open like they were expecting royalty. Funny, considering I wasn't even on the guest list. My name's Rachel. I'm 34. I live in Stanislaus County, California, and I've been working land surveys for over a decade. Not glamorous work, but it's honest. 2 nights ago, Aunt Linda left me this weird voicemail. Her voice low, clipped. "There's a shift coming, Rachel. The family legacy's about to be rewritten." That's all she said. No invite, no details. So I showed up. The parking lot was full of polished SUVs and rental sedans. A valet gave me a look like I'd wandered in from a hayfield. I ignored him and headed toward the main event tent. The whispers started before I even crossed the threshold. Is that? She actually came? No one told her? Quick note. Before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? I kept walking, jaw tight. The tent was decked out in white silk drapes, hanging lights, and polished wood floors that creaked under my boots. I scanned the room. Everyone looked polished, vineyard chic. Linda caught my eye from across the room. She gave me a stiff nod like she was signaling a damn traffic stop, then turned away. The place was packed. Servers walked around offering branded wine samples. I tried to find a seat but realized mine had a folded name card stuck behind a stack of wine crates near the back, practically behind the damn bar. No one came to greet me. Carter was on stage already, grinning like he'd just won a Senate seat. He didn't look at me once. I saw his fiancée, Elise, standing next to him in a cream dress and heels way too clean for a working vineyard. She took the mic. "We're standing on the shoulders of giants," she said, voice smooth like a politician's. "And some of us took more scenic routes to get here, like working in land surveys. What even is that glorified meter reading?" Laughter erupted, sharp, intentional. I froze mid-sip, my knuckles tightened around the stem of the glass. They didn't say my name, but everyone knew exactly who she meant. I felt it. The sideways glances, the smirks. Then, out of nowhere, this older man stood up near the front. Gray beard, rough denim jacket. He raised his glass and said, loud and clear, "I don't know about all that, but this young woman helped save my family's farm 7 years back. Kept us from losing everything. Don't know where we'd be without her." The room fell dead silent. He looked right at me. Some legacies don't need rewriting. They just need remembering. Elisa's smile dropped. Carter turned pale. I set my wine glass down, stood up, and walked straight to that man. After I thanked the old man and walked out of the vineyard tent, I didn't go home. I drove straight to Oak Ridge Law Group. Grandpa's will was scheduled to be read the next morning, and I wasn't about to sit through another night pretending like I didn't care. Linda had texted me one word, "Come." So I did. The firm sat on the edge of downtown Stockton, all glass and marble like it thought it was in Los Angeles. I walked in, still wearing the same boots from the vineyard, still dusty, still not giving a damn. The receptionist asked if I had an appointment. I said, "They're waiting for me." She didn't argue. Conference room B smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood. Gerald was already inside, sipping coffee like he owned the place. Carter leaned back in a leather chair like he was posing for a stock photo. Elise didn't even look up from her phone. I stood. I wasn't sitting next to any of them. The lawyer came in, sharp suit, dead eyes, folder in hand. He didn't waste time. "This is the final executed will of Mr. Everett Caldwell, dated February of this year." He flipped it open. "The Caldwell Ranch, along with all assets tied to its operations, shall be passed in equal thirds to Gerald Manning, Carter Caldwell, and Elise Holbrook." He kept reading, but I stopped hearing. No mention of my name, not even a footnote. I felt the heat rise in my face, my jaw locked. I stared at Gerald. He gave me this tight, satisfied smile like he was closing a deal. "This must be a mistake," I said. The lawyer glanced at me like I was an unpaid intern interrupting a board meeting. "This document is notarized, digitally recorded, and was submitted to probate last month." That's all he said. That was it. No one blinked. No one flinched. Linda stayed quiet the whole time. She didn't meet my eyes. When the meeting ended, the others filed out like it was just another Tuesday. I didn't move. Linda waited until the hallway cleared, then finally walked over and shut the door. "I wasn't supposed to see it," she said. "But your grandfather had an earlier draft. one where you were included. It was signed, printed, and saved in his home office. Then where the hell is it? I asked. She shook her head. It vanished a few weeks before he passed. We thought he misplaced it, but... She reached into her purse and handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a blurry photocopy. My name, plain as day, listed next to Carter and Gerald. Elise wasn't mentioned at all. I looked up at her. Why are you telling me now? Because now I'm not the only one who saw it. That's when Marcus stepped in. He was leaning in the doorway with his laptop bag slung over one shoulder and that half smirk he always wore when he was holding something hot. He walked over and handed me a flash drive. Pulled this last night. Remote access logs from your grandfather's cloud backup. Someone edited the master will file 2 weeks after Everett died. I stared at him. That's impossible. He was already gone. Exactly, he said. And guess whose IP address showed up on the metadata? I didn't have to ask. Gerald, he said. The edit happened at 2:18 a.m. from his office computer. My stomach turned. That smug smile, that phony lawyer voice reading me out of my own family. I clenched the flash drive in my fist and turned to Linda. You ready to see what else they buried? She gave a single nod. Let's dig. We didn't wait. Marcus and I got in my truck and drove straight out to the ranch. The Caldwell property had sat empty since Grandpa passed. Gerald locked it up tight right after the funeral, claiming he needed to secure the estate. That was bullshit. He was hiding something, and now I was ready to rip the walls apart if I had to. The gate chain was new. Marcus snipped it in under 10 seconds without blinking. We pulled around the side of the main house and parked behind the old tool shed. The air smelled like dry weeds and dust, the kind that clings to your clothes and doesn't let go. I stepped up onto the porch and tried the front door. Locked, obviously. Marcus jimmied the side window with a flathead, and we climbed through like a couple of teenagers breaking curfew. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. The same oak dining table, the same crooked photo of Grandpa shaking hands with some senator. I ran my hand over the dusty mantle. He always said everything important stayed close, I muttered. Marcus turned to me. Where would he keep originals? Under our feet. I walked to the dining room and pulled back the corner rug. There was a barely visible cutout in the hardwood. No handle, no hinges. Grandpa built it that way on purpose. I slid a thin steak knife from the kitchen drawer and wedged it into the seam. With a hard tug, the trapdoor popped open. Whoa, Marcus said. Narrow stairs led down into a cold, concrete storage room. No lights, no windows, no service. We used our phones to light the way. The air was stale. Filing cabinets lined the walls. A couple cardboard boxes were half crushed under mildew, but the main cabinets looked untouched. Check the metal one, I said. Left side. Marcus found it, a gray industrial cabinet with a padlock. I reached behind the heater pipe and pulled out an old spare key Grandpa had duct taped there 10 years ago. The lock clicked open. Inside, everything was arranged in color-coded folders, but one stood out, a black one, unmarked, thick with papers. I pulled it out and flipped it open. The first page hit me like a punch to the ribs. January 2023, I read. That's 4 weeks before he went into the hospital. Marcus leaned in. Is that his signature? Yeah, and mine, and Carter's, and Gerald's. I flipped the page. But not Elise. She's not even mentioned. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He pulled out his laptop and connected a portable scanner. Let's see if it's real. He uploaded the doc, ran a quick hash check, and sat back. This thing's legit, encrypted with your grandpa's federal credentials. His old USDA cert still shows active verification. No way to fake that. I felt the weight of it settle into my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't forgotten. They buried it. Marcus's screen pinged. He turned it toward me. Someone accessed the estate's internal server 3 days ago, right before that ceremony. What were they after? Metadata related to this exact draft. The access came from inside the property line. Look, MAC address traces back to Gerald's laptop. I stared at the screen. They're still trying to cover their tracks, I said. Marcus zipped the black folder into his bag. Then we move fast. We don't wait for them to bury it again. I reached down, closed the cabinet, and slammed the lock back into place. This house kept the truth. Now it's coming with us. We left the ranch before sunset and drove straight to Copper Ridge, a small town about 30 minutes outside Stockton, where Grandpa's old legal partner, Vincent Bell had retired. The man had ghosted me for months. Wouldn't return calls, wouldn't respond to emails. But I had something now he couldn't ignore. His house was set back behind an overgrown hedge and a rusted mailbox with appealing number 8. Marcus waited in the car while I walked up and knocked twice. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Finally, the door opened 2 inches. A pale eye stared out through the crack. "I'm not interested." "You will be," I said, holding up the photo I'd found in Grandpa's desk. Him and Vincent shaking hands over a signed folder, dated January 2023. The door didn't open wider, but I saw his hand reach for the photo. He took it through the gap, looked at it, and sighed. "Where did you get this?" "My grandfather's basement." A long silence. Then the door creaked open just enough for me to step inside. The house smelled like old paper and lemon polish. There were stacks of law books on the coffee table, newspapers in a basket, but the place was spotless. He didn't sit down, neither did I. "I'm not supposed to talk to you," he said. That stopped mattering the second Gerald started rewriting the will. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "You witnessed him sign the January draft." He didn't move. "I have the copy." His signature. My name, Carter's, Gerald's, but not Elise. "I need you to confirm it." Vincent stared at the photo in his hands like it was a live grenade. "He made me stay quiet," he said finally. "Gerald." I folded my arms. "How?" He walked to a small cabinet, opened it, and poured a couple inches of bourbon into a glass. Didn't offer me one. "Back in 2008, I mishandled a probate case," he said. "Technically, fraud, but never went public. Gerald got his hands on the file. Said if I didn't cooperate, he'd destroy me professionally, even in retirement. So you let him erase me," I said. My voice came out colder than I meant, but I didn't take it back. "I didn't change the will," he snapped. "I just kept my mouth shut. There's a difference." "Not to me." We stared each other down for a few long seconds. Then he drained his glass and set it down hard. "Fine. Yes. I witnessed Everett sign the January draft. He was clear about what he wanted. That draft, the one you found, was the version he intended to submit." "Will you say that on record?" "Only if I have legal protection. If Gerald goes down, he'll take me with him out of spite." I nodded. "We'll make sure you're covered." He hesitated again, then turned to a desk drawer and pulled out a yellow sticky note. On it were 10 characters. Uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols. "What's that?" Marcus asked, stepping in now. Vincent handed it to me. "Your grandfather's off-grid encryption passphrase. He used it for private backups. Said it was the last layer if anyone ever tampered with things." "You're sure this is still active?" I asked. "It was in January. Only Everett and I ever knew it." I tucked the note into my jacket pocket. "If this proves what I think it will," I said, "Gerald's leverage over you won't mean a damn thing." Vincent walked us to the door, slower now, like the weight of it had finally cracked his spine a little. As I stepped out onto the porch, he called out behind me. I should have fought harder. I didn't turn around. "Now's your chance." We didn't stop for food. We didn't stop for gas. We drove straight back to the ranch. I parked right in front of the porch this time. No sneaking around. If Gerald wanted to throw a fit, he could meet me here. Marcus grabbed his laptop bag and the black folder while I pulled the sticky note from my jacket pocket. 10 ugly characters, scribbled in shaky old man handwriting. But it felt like a damn sword in my hand. We went upstairs to Grandpa's office. The room hadn't changed. Same oak desk, same brass lamp, same cracked leather chair. But I knew what we were looking for this time. In the back of the bottom drawer was a small steel lockbox. Grandpa always kept it there, under the false panel. He called it his fail-safe. It was still there, untouched. We set it on the desk. Marcus popped it open with a flathead, and inside was a solid-state drive, wrapped in a handkerchief and sealed with electrical tape. "No labels," Marcus said. "That's promising." He plugged it into his laptop and entered the encryption sequence off the sticky note. The screen flashed once, then unlocked. "Holy shit," he breathed. "This thing's loaded." Folders popped up in layers. Legal, personal, video, letters. Marcus opened legal first. There it was again. The January 2023 draft. Same signatures. No Elise. Then the video folder. "Here," he said, clicking it open. The thumbnail was just Grandpa sitting at his desk, wearing his old forest green vest, hands folded, eyes straight ahead. Marcus hit play. Rachel, Grandpa's voice said, steady but tired. If you're watching this, it means something's gone sideways. I stepped closer. My throat burned. I've named you my heir. You've earned it, not just by blood, but by character. If Gerald, Carter, or anyone else tells you different, don't believe them. This video overrides anything submitted without my knowledge. Gerald's got a sharp mind, but a dangerous one. If he's involved, check the drafts, check the edits. He paused, leaned back slightly, and sighed. I trust you more than any of them. The land deserves your hands. The screen froze on his face, then faded to black. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Marcus clicked open the letters folder. There's a draft email here, saved but never sent. He opened it. The subject line read, "Need to discuss urgent breach of trust." Marcus read aloud, "Gerald accessed my files without permission. I believe he intends to alter documents. Rachel must be protected in all final versions. She is the intended successor. I'm preparing a secure backup." My hands were shaking. "What's the date?" I asked. Marcus checked the timestamp. March 22nd, after the stroke. "No way," I said. Gerald was in Tahoe that week. I remember. Carter posted pictures of them skiing. So Gerald couldn't have collaborated on anything legally after that. Not without forging. We sat in silence for a second before Marcus reached for a USB duplicator in his bag. "I'm copying everything. Twice. One for the press, one for the lawyer." I nodded, trying to breathe through the pressure building behind my ribs. Linda showed up 20 minutes later. She came straight in, no knocking, just her heels echoing through the empty hall like gunshots. We didn't speak at first. I just handed her the flash drive and watched her face. She plugged it into her tablet, scanned through the contents, and froze when Grandpa's voice played through her headphones. When she took them off, her face was pale. "This encryption matches everything he used at USDA," she said. "This is his signature, digital, and literal." "Can you stand behind it?" I asked. She nodded. "I can testify under oath this is real." I looked down at the desk, the same desk they tried to erase me from. "Then let's bring it back into the light." Linda made the call, said the reporter was legit. Local guy, used to cover land rights issues, now freelancing after getting pushed out by his editor over something political. We met him that evening at a half-dead bookstore cafe, tucked between a nail salon and an antique pawn shop on 8th Street. The kind of place where no one asks questions, and the espresso machine hisses louder than most conversations. He was already at the corner booth, flannel sleeves rolled up, wire frame glasses hanging low on his nose. Late 40s, maybe. Looked exhausted in that way only truth diggers do. "Rachel Caldwell?" he asked when I walked in. "Yeah." I dropped the flash drive on the table. "We brought receipts." He didn't touch it at first, just gave me a long, cautious stare. "Before I open this, I need to know what I'm walking into. You're saying your family forged a will?" I sat down across from him. "I'm saying my grandfather's estate was hijacked by a man who should have never had legal access, and we have the original documentation, the digital edits, the encryption trails, and a notarized video to prove it." His eyebrows lifted slightly. Linda slid a printed summary packet across the table. "Start here." He flipped through the first few pages, squinting at the signatures, the metadata logs, the USDA verification code. Then he plugged the drive into his laptop and opened the video. Grandpa's voice filled the quiet space like a ghost walking through the aisles. The journalist leaned in. His fingers froze over the keyboard. "Jesus," he muttered. "He says your name clearly, repeatedly, calls you his heir." I didn't speak. I let it hang in the air. He watched the whole thing without pausing, then scrolled through the file list. The draft email caught his eye. Marcus had labeled it with a timestamp and GPS log for good measure. "Who's this Gerald guy?" he asked. "My stepfather," I said, "used Grandpa's death as a door and walked right through it." The guy leaned back in the booth, rubbing his chin. "This isn't just some ugly family fight. This is a state fraud. And if those USDA credentials were tampered with, it could escalate to federal." Linda nodded. "That's why we're giving you this now, under embargo. Founders Day is in 3 days. Half the town, all the investors, the county board, they'll all be there. That's when we want the story to break." The reporter looked between us. "You're aiming for a public collapse." "No," I said. "We're aiming for truth. The public part's just insurance. He tapped the side of his laptop. Military-grade encryption, digital signature traces, multiple witnesses. This is airtight. And time-stamped, Marcus added, stepping in from the other side of the cafe. Gerald couldn't have accessed some of these systems without remote intrusion. There's no way he can claim innocence once this drops. The guy sat there for a moment, quiet, head slightly bowed as he read through a few more documents. His coffee sat untouched. Then he said, low and even, "They tried to erase you." I stared him straight in the eye. "Then let's write it back in." 3 days later, I stood near the back of the festival lawn, tucked between a hot dog cart and a hay bale stack, watching Elise walk up the stage steps in her silk blazer like she owned the damn county. The town square was packed. Booths lined the sidewalks, kids ran around with snow cones, and the mayor sat front row like he'd been promised something big. The Caldwell Foundation banner hung heavy above the stage. Marcus stood beside me, one hand in his jacket pocket, his thumb hovering over the control button. Elise took the mic with that tight, pageant smile she always wore when cameras were on. "Thank you all for being here as we honor the Caldwell family legacy," she said, her voice sugar slick. "This land, this town, this dream, none of it would have been possible without strength, vision, and selective stewardship." That last word landed like a slap. Linda stood nearby, lips pressed tight. Carter was on stage too, behind Elise, shifting on his feet like he already knew something was about to detonate. Elise kept going. "Our mission is to modernize the vision Everett Caldwell started, one that looks to the future, not the past." Marcus leaned toward me. "On your word." I nodded once. He tapped the button. The stage screen behind Elise flickered. She paused, looking back. Then the feed cut to black before audio kicked in. Her voice, crystal clear. "If Rachel ever pushes back, just say she signed off. No one checks details. Keep it quiet until after the estate settles." The crowd turned still. Elise froze. Another voice followed. Gerald's. "She's a relic, Elise. She doesn't matter. No one will miss her." A ripple of gasps ran through the audience. I watched a group of older farmers stand up in the third row, guys who knew Grandpa personally, who'd worked land with him side by side. None of them said a word. They just stood, arms crossed, faces set. Elise turned white. Gerald stepped forward from the side curtain, trying to play it off with a raised hand. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Audio can be manipulated." But Marcus didn't give him the chance. He switched to the final clip. Grandpa's video lit up the big screen. His voice rolled out like thunder. "If anything appears without my express signature, you are to ignore it. Rachel is my rightful heir, no exceptions." The crowd didn't move. Then someone clapped. Once, hard, then another. And then everyone was on their feet. Even the mayor stood, looking around like he didn't know where to land. Gerald didn't speak. Elise's eyes darted, looking for an exit. Carter, he didn't say a word. He just stepped back, away from her, away from all of it. I locked eyes with Gerald. He stared like he didn't recognize me, like the ground he'd stood on his whole life had suddenly dropped out from under him. The screen went black. Nobody cheered, nobody laughed, just silence. Solid, heavy, deserved. And I stood in it, finally unshaken. The next morning, we walked into San Joaquin County Courthouse like we were carrying a loaded weapon. Because we were. Marcus had the files backed up on 3 drives. Linda held the hard copy of the notarized January draft in a sealed envelope. I had Belle's signed affidavit in my purse. Gerald sat across the aisle with 2 lawyers flanking him. His jaw was tight. Elise sat next to him, pale, mascara clinging to her lashes like she'd barely slept. Carter was behind them, alone. No blazer, no smile, just quiet. The clerk called our hearing. Civil, not criminal, yet. But the damage was already showing. The judge was an older woman, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. She glanced down at the docket and then at us. "Let's begin." Our attorney, someone Marcus had vetted personally, stood and placed the sealed draft on the judge's bench. "Your Honor, we are presenting an original notarized will signed by Everett Caldwell, dated January 2023. It includes digital verification tied to Mr. Caldwell's USDA credentials, a private video declaration, and a sworn statement from a legal witness, Mr. Vincent Bell, now retired, who confirmed under oath that this is the final and intended version." Gerald's lawyer stood. "This entire production is fabricated. The alleged video could have been deep-faked, the digital credentials cloned, and the statement from Mr. Bell coerced. There's no way to prove authenticity without chain of custody. Marcus rose, holding up his drive like a mic drop. We have the full chain, he said. Metadata, time-stamped backups, IP logs from devices used by Mr. Manning after Everett Caldwell's passing. This file was modified from Gerald's office computer at 2:18 a.m., 2 weeks after the man died. The room went quiet. Gerald didn't flinch, but Elise shifted in her seat. Linda stood next, calm, precise. Your Honor, I've reviewed the Caldwell Trust accounts as treasurer for the Family Foundation. $284,000 was moved in the past 18 months to a series of shell accounts tied to the Cayman Islands. We hired an independent forensic auditor to verify. The routing paths lead back to Mr. Manning's personal banking network. The judge narrowed her eyes. Is that report submitted for review? Submitted, Linda said, sliding the packet to the clerk. Elise let out a strangled breath like she was trying not to cry. That's when Carter stood up. No one told him to. He walked to the front, holding a small black hard drive in his hand. I have emails, he said, voice low but steady. Between Elise and a family lawyer, payments made after Grandpa passed, instructions to bury the earlier will and suppress digital evidence. I didn't know how far it went until now. I ignored it. That's on me. He handed the drive to the clerk and turned to face the bench. I believe my cousin Rachel is the rightful heir. I'm not proud of how long it took me to say that. Elise broke then, full sobbing, hands over her face. Gerald didn't move. The judge leaned back in her chair and looked at each of them slowly, like she was reading their stories just by watching them breathe. I am issuing an emergency freeze on all access to the Caldwell estate by Gerald Manning, Elise Holbrook, and any affiliated legal representatives. A formal inquiry will be opened. Until further notice, all operations tied to the foundation and property are to be placed under independent oversight. She banged the gavel once. Adjourned. We filed out in silence. No one said a word as we walked down the courthouse steps. Outside, the sun was blinding. I didn't shield my eyes. It didn't feel like a win. It felt like truth finally landed where it belonged. We drove straight from the courthouse to the Caldwell Foundation headquarters. No music, no talking. Just the sound of tires over pavement and the quiet hum of a reckoning closing in. The boardroom was already full when we arrived. 6 trustees, 2 county financial officers, a few respected community leaders from the Ag Coalition. All of them seated in silence, papers in front of them, tension thick in the air. Gerald sat at the far end of the table, suit pressed, face unreadable. Elise, Jessica apparently, her legal name on every document, sat to his left, eyes red but makeup perfect. Jason, Carter to everyone else, stood behind an empty chair, shoulders stiff. The lead auditor cleared his throat. We've completed the full audit of the Caldwell Trust and Foundation records. The findings are serious, disturbing, frankly. He tapped his tablet and a projection filled the wall behind him. Transaction records, timelines, shell company names, routing paths. Mr. Manning authorized multiple transfers over a 4-year period. The funds were disguised as grant disbursements, but ultimately funneled into personal offshore accounts. Documentation was either falsified or deleted entirely from public view. No one interrupted. Then came the recordings. Marcus had compiled them like a damn prosecutor. First, Gerald's voice. She won't fight it. Rachel was always too soft. Then Elise. Once the paperwork clears, we can spin it. Say it was about sustainability, modernization, whatever sells. Elise shot to her feet. That's taken out of context. Sit down, one of the board members said flatly. She looked around the room. No one stood with her, not even Gerald. The auditor kept going. Beyond the financials, we also discovered direct communications between Ms. Holbrook and legal counsel, encouraging suppression of the January draft. Ms. Caldwell's digital access was revoked during this same period. Elise, Jessica, folded her arms tight over her chest. I didn't forge anything. No, Jason said quietly. But you knew. She turned toward him like he'd slapped her. Excuse me? Jason walked around the table and stood in front of me. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was Grandpa's original crest, an engraved brass seal he'd only used on foundational documents. One of a kind. I found it in Dad's office, hidden under a drawer liner. He kept it after the fake will was submitted. He held it out. I don't deserve forgiveness, he said. But this does. I took the box without a word and closed it gently in my hand. Behind us, the door opened. Two plainclothes officers stepped in and approached Gerald. He didn't argue, didn't make a scene, just stood, straightened his cuffs, and walked out with them like he was heading to a board lunch. Elise didn't follow. She sat alone, staring at her shoes. No one clapped. No one cheered. The board chair cleared his throat. "Ms. Caldwell, do you have anything to say before we conclude?" I looked around the room. "Everything that matters has already been said," I replied. I walked out. The hallway was quiet except for the sound of my boots on tile. When I pushed open the front doors, I froze. A small crowd had gathered, mostly older ranchers, a few foundation employees, a couple local reporters held back behind a sidewalk barrier. They didn't say anything, didn't swarm. One man, probably in his 60s, raised 2 fingers to his forehead and gave me a silent salute. I nodded. Then I walked down the steps, past the cameras, past the questions, and didn't say a single word. This wasn't for applause, it was for justice. I came back in early spring. The air smelled like soil waking up. The Caldwell Ranch sat quiet at the end of the dirt road, its outline sharp against the green hills. No trucks in the drive, no smoke from the chimney. Just me, a backpack, and the key they'd once tried to keep from me. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. The silence was thick, but it didn't feel hollow, just settled. I walked room to room, kitchen, pantry, living room. Everything still in its place. The mug with Grandpa's initials still sat on the windowsill above the sink. In the study, I paused. The desk was there. Solid oak, scuffed corners, brass handles dulled with age. I ran my hand over the surface, slow. This was where he wrote the original draft, where he drew the line between legacy and manipulation. I crouched down and opened the bottom drawer. Tucked beneath a stack of old maps was a fireproof envelope. I pulled it out. Gerald's version, the fake will. I stood, walked to the hearth, and opened the flue. Tossed in a couple logs and struck a match. The flame caught fast. Then I held up the forged will, let the heat lick the edges, and dropped it in. The paper curled and blackened in seconds. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just watched until it was gone. The truth didn't need me to defend it anymore. It was on record, in memory. I'd already transferred 85% of the inheritance to a land conservation nonprofit. The Caldwell Stewardship Fund, its name would carry his forward. Not Gerald's, not Carter's, not mine. His. The rest, 15%, I set aside for a new grant. It was already funding 4 women vets going through ag training in Northern California. I'd met them. Tough as nails. Just needed someone to believe they belonged on the land. That's what Grandpa gave me. That's what I was giving back. I stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and took one last look around. This was never about money. It was never about power. It was about being seen. The fire crackled behind me as I walked out the front door, pulled it shut, and locked it with the key that was mine from the start. They tried to bury the story. Now it lives louder than ever.